Admiral Zekthar of the Galactic Council stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Supremacy, watching the tactical display with growing irritation. The holographic projections showed yet another human colony ship attempting to establish a settlement in the restricted Outer Rim territories. These upstart humans had been growing increasingly bold since their discovery of faster-than-light travel barely 2 centuries ago. Another human incursion, Admiral, reported his tactical officer, a tall Vorthack with purple skin and forearms. They've established a mining operation on Kepler 442b without proper authorization from the Council. Zekthar's mandibles clicked together in annoyance. The humans were like insects, spreading across the galaxy with reckless abandon. They had no respect for the established order that had maintained peace for over 3 millennia. The Galactic Council, composed of 12 advanced species, had carefully divided the galaxy into zones of influence. Humans, being newcomers, were supposed to remain in their designated sectors. Send the usual warning transmission, Zekthar commanded. Tell them they have 72 hours to evacuate or face consequences. The communications officer, a crystalline being from Nexus Prime, shimmered as she transmitted the message. Within minutes, a response came back that made Zekthar's blood pressure spike dangerously. Admiral, the human commander is requesting to speak with you directly. The main screen flickered to life, showing a weathered human face with steel-gray eyes and a defiant expression. Captain Sarah Chun of the colonial vessel Pioneer stared back at him without a trace of the deference he expected from inferior species. Admiral Zekthar, she said in heavily accented galactic standard. I'm Captain Chun. We've received your ultimatum, and I'm afraid we're going to have to decline your generous offer to abandon our lawfully established colony. Lawfully established? Zekthar's voice rose an octave. You have no authority in this sector, human. The Galactic Council's jurisdiction supersedes any claims your primitive government might make. Captain Chin's expression didn't change. With respect, Admiral, we don't recognize the Council's authority over sovereign human space. This system is over 200 light-years from any Council member's territory. We filed our colonization claims through proper channels with the Terran Colonial Administration. The Terran Colonial Administration has no standing in galactic law. Zekthar slammed his fist on the armrest of his command chair. You will evacuate immediately, or we will remove you by force. I'm sorry to hear that, Chen replied calmly. But these civilians have invested everything they have in this colony. We're not leaving without a fight. The transmission ended, leaving Zekthar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew exchanged glances. The human's audacity was unprecedented. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, no species had ever openly defied the Council's authority so brazenly. Sir, the tactical officer ventured carefully. The human colony ship is equipped with only basic defensive systems. Our fleet could easily overwhelm them. Zekthar nodded slowly. Indeed, perhaps it's time these humans learned their place in the galactic hierarchy. Signal the rest of the fleet. We'll make an example of this colony that will discourage any future human expansion into restricted space. The Supremacy was the pride of the Vorthack Navy, a massive dreadnought stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull bristled with plasma cannons and particle beam arrays capable of cracking a planet's crust. Accompanying it were 12 smaller warships from various Council member species, each one technologically superior to anything the humans had ever fielded. As the fleet moved toward the human colony, Zekthar felt a familiar satisfaction. The humans would learn today that the galaxy belonged to its established powers, not to primitive newcomers who had barely crawled out of their home system. The first sign that something was wrong came when his sensor operator, a multi-eyed creature from the hegemony of Kresh, suddenly stiffened at his station. Admiral, I'm detecting a massive hyperspace distortion approaching from the direction of human space. Probably reinforcements, Zekthar said dismissively. A few more colony ships won't make any difference. No, sir, this is different. The signature is enormous, larger than anything in our databases. Zekthar frowned and moved to look at the sensor readings himself. The energy signatures were indeed massive, but they were also completely unfamiliar. The human ships had always been crude, functional vessels with simple fusion drives and basic energy weapons. This reading suggested something far more advanced. Time to emergence. Approximately 10 minutes, sir. Very well. All ships, maintain formation. Whatever the humans are sending, we'll deal with it appropriately. But, as the minutes ticked by, Zekthar found himself growing increasingly uneasy. The energy signature kept growing stronger, suggesting a vessel of impossible size. His intelligence reports had never mentioned anything like this in the human fleet. When the hyperspace emergence finally occurred, the bridge fell silent. A ship emerged from the swirling vortex of hyperspace that dwarfed even the mighty Supremacy. It was a sleek, predatory-looking vessel nearly 4 kilometers long, its hull a matte black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange geometric patterns ran along its surface, glowing with a soft blue energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Mother of the Void," whispered the tactical officer. "What is that thing?" Zekthar stared at the massive human vessel, his confidence evaporating like moisture in a desert wind. This was not the primitive human technology he had expected. The ship's very presence seemed to warp space around it, and his sensors were having difficulty getting clear readings through what appeared to be some kind of advanced stealth field. "Sir," the communications officer said in a voice barely above a whisper, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." On screen, the image that appeared made Zekthar take an involuntary step backward. The human who faced him was clearly military, wearing a crisp uniform with insignia he didn't recognize. But it wasn't the uniform that unsettled him. It was the man's eyes. They held a cold, calculating intelligence that spoke of centuries of warfare and technological advancement. "I am Admiral Marcus Cross of the Terran Navy, commanding the battleship Hurricane," the human said in perfect galactic standard. "You have threatened Terran civilians and invaded sovereign human space. You have exactly one opportunity to withdraw your forces and return to Council territory." "Admiral Cross," Zekthar said, trying to regain his composure. "You are outnumbered 13-1. I suggest you reconsider your position." The human admiral's expression didn't change. "Admiral Zekthar, I'm going to give you some free education about human military doctrine. We don't measure threats by numbers. We measure them by capability. And right now, you're facing a Hurricane-class battleship that represents 300 years of human military engineering and a very bad attitude toward bullies. Impossible, Zekthar snarled. Your species has barely achieved interstellar flight. You cannot possibly possess technology superior to ours." Admiral Cross smiled, and the expression sent chills down Zekthar's spine. "That's what everyone thinks, Admiral, right up until they meet us in battle. You see, we humans have a saying, underestimate us at your peril. Your council made the mistake of assuming that just because we're new to the galactic community, we're primitive." "You're bluffing," Zekthar said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Admiral," his sensor operator called out urgently, "the human ship's energy readings are off the charts. I'm detecting weapon signatures unlike anything in our databases." Admiral Cross leaned back in his chair. "Let me share something with you about human psychology, Admiral Zekthar. We're a species that conquered our own planet through superior tactics, technology, and sheer bloody-minded persistence. We've been preparing for contact with hostile alien civilizations since before we left our home system. Did you really think we'd venture into the galaxy unprepared?" The tactical display suddenly lit up with new contacts. More human ships were emerging from hyperspace. Not the crude colony vessels Zekthar expected, but sleek destroyers and cruisers that moved with predatory grace. 12 additional human warships, Admiral, reported the tactical officer, his voice cracking with stress. They formed a battle formation around the Hurricane. 13 ships, Admiral Cross corrected pleasantly. "But you're still thinking in terms of numerical superiority. Let me demonstrate why that's a mistake." The Hurricane's weapons systems came online with a sound that Zekthar felt more than heard, a deep thrumming that seemed to resonate in his bones. The ship's hull began to glow with crackling energy discharges as massive weapon emplacements emerged from hidden recesses. "What you're looking at," Admiral Cross continued, "is the culmination of human military engineering. The Hurricane-class battleship is designed specifically for fleet engagement against technologically advanced opponents. It carries enough firepower to level a continent, and enough armor to shrug off anything short of a nova. Zekthar looked at his tactical displays with growing alarm. His ships were already being painted by targeting systems so advanced that his own sensors could barely detect them. The humans had achieved target locks on his entire fleet in seconds. "This is impossible," he muttered. "You keep saying that word," Admiral Cross observed. "I don't think it means what you think it means. The truth is, Admiral, your council has grown complacent. You've maintained peace through threat of overwhelming force for so long that you've forgotten how to innovate, how to adapt, how to fight against an opponent who doesn't play by your rules." The human ships began to move, and Zekthar watched in horrified fascination as they demonstrated capabilities that defied everything he knew about space combat. They moved with impossible grace, their formation flowing like water around his much larger fleet. Their acceleration curves suggested propulsion technology decades ahead of anything the Council possessed. "You have one final chance, Admiral," Cross said. "Order your fleet to withdraw from human space immediately. If you choose to attack, I promise you that this engagement will be studied in military academies across the galaxy as an example of what happens when arrogance meets preparation." Zekthar found himself in an impossible situation. His pride demanded that he attack these upstart humans and teach them their place. But his tactical experience warned him that he was facing something far beyond his capabilities. The Hurricane alone massed nearly as much as his entire fleet, and the sensor readings suggested weapons and defensive systems that operated on principles he couldn't even identify. "Sir," his tactical officer prompted quietly. The weight of command settled heavily on Zekthar's shoulders. He had spent his entire career enforcing council authority through superior technology and overwhelming force. The idea that these primitive humans could field a fleet capable of challenging the established galactic order was almost beyond comprehension. But the evidence was right there on his tactical displays. 13 human ships that moved like hunting predators, armed with weapons that defied classification, commanded by officers who spoke with the quiet confidence of those who had never known defeat. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Zekthar faced an enemy who might actually be superior to his own forces. The question was, what was he going to do about it? Admiral Zekthar's pride won over his tactical sense. 3 millennia of Galactic Council supremacy could not be challenged by newcomers, regardless of their apparent technological advancement. With a gesture that would seal the fate of his fleet, he activated the battle communications array. "All ships, attack formation Theta 7. Target the largest human vessel. These primitives need to learn respect for their betters." The Vorthack Dreadnought Supremacy opened fire first, its massive plasma cannons unleashing torrents of superheated energy that could melt through the hull of any known starship. 11 other Council vessels joined the barrage, their combined firepower enough to sterilize a small planet. Admiral Cross watched the incoming fire with detached professional interest. "Helm, evasive pattern Echo 4. Weapons, return fire with precision strikes only. Let's show them the difference between quantity and quality." The Hurricane moved like no ship its size should have been able to. Instead of the ponderous maneuvering typical of Dreadnought-class vessels, it flowed through space with liquid grace, its revolutionary inertial dampening systems allowing it to perform maneuvers that would have turned the crew of any other ship into paste. The Council's plasma barrage, aimed at where the Hurricane should have been, instead struck empty space. Secondary explosions lit up the void as the superheated plasma dissipated harmlessly into the vacuum. "Impossible," breathed Zekthar's tactical officer. "Nothing that large should be able to move like that." The Hurricane's response was swift and devastating. Arrays of weapons that had been hidden within the ship's hull emerged like the quills of some massive predator. What appeared to be solid metal barriers retracted to reveal gun ports, housing weapons unlike anything in Galactic Council databases. The first volley from the Hurricane struck the Council formation like the hammer of an angry god. Instead of the crude, kinetic weapons or simple energy beams the aliens expected, the human battleship unleashed a barrage of exotic matter projectiles that seemed to bend space around them as they traveled. The lead Council destroyer, a sleek Crescian vessel called the Blade of Nexus, simply ceased to exist. One moment, it was accelerating toward the human formation, and the next it was an expanding cloud of superheated plasma and twisted metal. The exotic matter rounds hadn't just penetrated its shields and armor. They had fundamentally disrupted the molecular bonds holding the ship together. When the void was that? Zekthar demanded, staring at the empty space where the destroyer had been. His science officer, a pale insectoid creature from the Hive worlds, was frantically checking her instruments. Admiral, those projectiles, they're not behaving according to known physics. It's as if they're phasing in and out of our dimensional space. The second human volley targeted a Nexary heavy cruiser. This time, instead of exotic matter rounds, the Hurricane fired what appeared to be controlled bursts of antimatter contained within magnetic bottles. The cruiser's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and absorb kinetic impacts, were utterly useless against weapons that annihilated matter on contact. The proud vessel that had served the Council for over 2 centuries died in a flash of light that briefly outshone the system's star. All ships, scatter formation. Zekthar barked into his communications array. Don't give them mass targets. But the human fleet had already anticipated this maneuver. The 12 escort vessels that had emerged with the Hurricane spread out in a coordinated pattern that demonstrated tactical thinking decades ahead of Council doctrine. Each human ship moved to intercept fleeing Council vessels with precision that spoke of extensive combat experience. Admiral Cross's voice cut through the chaos of battle communications. Council fleet, you are outmatched and outgunned. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated according to the standard conventions of warfare. Never. Zekthar snarled back. The Council does not surrender to primitives. Your choice, Cross replied with what sounded almost like sadness. All units, weapons free. Show them what human military engineering can accomplish. What followed was less a battle than a demonstration of technological superiority. The human ships moved through the Council formation like apex predators among prey animals, their weapons systems cutting through the aliens' defenses with contemptuous ease. The hegemony battle cruiser Eternal Glory, a massive vessel that had never been defeated in 300 years of service, found itself facing a single human destroyer barely 1/10 its mass. The ship's captain, a proud warrior named Vectar the Undefeated, ordered a full broadside that should have reduced the smaller vessel to scrap metal. Instead, the human destroyer's defensive systems activated what appeared to be some form of directed energy shielding that didn't just absorb the incoming fire. It redirected it back at the sender with compound interest. The Glory's own plasma cannons were turned against it, supplemented by additional energy that seemed to come from nowhere. Vectar had exactly enough time to register the impossible readings on his instruments before his own weapons killed him. Meanwhile, the Zephyrian fast attack ships, renowned throughout the galaxy for their speed and maneuverability, discovered that human vessels could not only match their acceleration, but exceed it while maintaining perfect formation discipline. The human escort ships moved like a pack of wolves, coordinating their attacks with split-second precision. Sir, Zekthar's communications officer reported in a voice tight with panic. We've lost 7 ships in 4 minutes. The humans are barely scratched. Indeed, despite the ferocious barrage directed at them, the human vessels showed no signs of damage. Their defensive systems seemed to operate on principles that made the Council's weapons ineffective. Energy weapons were absorbed or redirected. Kinetic projectiles were deflected by fields that shouldn't have been able to affect matter, and exotic attacks simply seemed to pass through the human ships without effect. How is this possible? Zekthar demanded. Our intelligence reports indicated that human technology was centuries behind ours. His intelligence officer, a nervous Quallen with telepathic abilities, was monitoring enemy communications. Sir, I'm picking up fragments of their tactical chatter. They're discussing our weapons as if they're antiquated. One of their officers just referred to our plasma cannons as cute. The Hurricane demonstrated its full capabilities as it engaged 3 Council ships simultaneously. Its main guns, massive weapons that dwarfed anything in the alien fleet, unleashed a barrage that seemed to tear holes in space itself. The targeted ships didn't just explode, they were pulled into dimensional rifts that collapsed moments after consuming them completely. Dimensional warfare, whispered the science officer in horrified awe. They're weaponizing space-time distortions. Admiral Cross's voice came through the communications array again, calm and professional despite the carnage surrounding him. Admiral Zekthar, you now have 4 ships remaining out of your original 13. I'm offering you one final opportunity to surrender. Your crews don't have to die for Council arrogance. Zekthar looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. The proud confidence they had shown at the beginning of the engagement had been replaced by something he had never seen in a Council military officer before: fear. These veterans who had served in dozens of campaigns against rebellious species were terrified of the humans they had dismissed as primitives. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "the humans are correct. We are completely outmatched. Our weapons cannot penetrate their defenses, and their weapons." He gestured helplessly at the tactical display, showing the debris fields where 7 warships had been moments before. "The Council does not surrender," Zekthar repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then, the Council dies," Admiral Cross replied with finality. "Hurricane, target the supremacy. Let's end this." The massive human battleship turned its full attention to Zekthar's flagship. The weapons that emerged from its hull were unlike anything that had been deployed so far. Massive installations that seemed to draw energy directly from the surrounding space-time continuum. Zekthar felt the bridge deck vibrate beneath his feet as the Hurricane's targeting systems locked onto his ship. Every alarm on the bridge was screaming warnings about energy buildups that exceeded his instrument's ability to measure. "Admiral," his helmsman called out desperately, "whatever they're charging up, our shields won't stop it. Nothing will stop it." The supremacy, pride of the Vorthak Navy and veteran of 100 campaigns, faced its final moment as the Hurricane prepared to demonstrate why humans had earned their reputation as the galaxy's most dangerous warriors. The energy building in the human ship's main guns was sufficient to crack a moon, focused into beams narrow enough to thread a needle. In that moment, as Zekthar stared death in the face, he finally understood the magnitude of his miscalculation. The humans hadn't just achieved interstellar flight, they had revolutionized it. They hadn't just developed weapons, they had transcended the very concepts of warfare that the Galaxy Council thought were immutable. The Hurricane's main guns reached full charge, ready to demonstrate once and for all that the age of Galactic Council supremacy was over. Admiral Zekthar closed his eyes and waited for the end. But instead of the obliteration he expected, he heard Admiral Cross's voice one more time, cutting through the chaos with unexpected mercy. "Hurricane, stand down. Let's give them a chance to make the right choice." Zekthar's eyes snapped open. On the main screen, Admiral Cross was leaning forward in his command chair, his expression serious but not unmerciful. "Admiral Zekthar," Cross said, "I'm going to explain something that your intelligence services apparently missed. Humans don't fight wars to prove superiority. We fight wars to end wars. You came here to teach us our place in the galactic hierarchy. Instead, you've learned yours." The words hung in air between the two fleets like a challenge and a promise combined. "The question now," Admiral Cross continued, "is whether you're wise enough to accept the lesson or too proud to survive learning it." Admiral Zekthar stared at the tactical display, showing the wreckage of 7 of his ships, their debris fields still glowing from the exotic energies that had destroyed them. The remaining 4 vessels of his once proud fleet hung motionless in space, their crews paralyzed by the demonstration of human military might they had just witnessed. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "Admiral Cross is requesting a response." Zekthar's mandibles clicked together in a rhythm that betrayed his inner turmoil. His entire worldview had been shattered in the span of minutes. The Galactic Council's technological superiority, the foundation of their authority for 3 millennia, had proven to be an illusion when confronted with human ingenuity. "Admiral Cross," he said finally, his voice hoarse with the weight of defeat, "what are your terms?" "Simple," came the immediate reply from the Hurricane's bridge. "You will withdraw your remaining ships from human space immediately. You will report to the Galactic Council exactly what happened here today, with no embellishments and no face-saving lies. And you will convey a message from the Terran Republic to your leadership." "What message?" Admiral Cross's expression hardened. "That the days of the Council treating humanity as second-class citizens are over. We tried diplomacy. We tried negotiation. We tried working within your system. But your response to our peaceful expansion has been threats and ultimatums. So now we're changing the rules of the game." Zekthar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. "You're declaring war on the Council?" "No," I admitted. We're declaring independence from Council authority. From this moment forward, humanity will govern its own affairs without interference from alien powers. Any Council vessel that enters human space without permission will be treated as a hostile force. The implications of this statement struck Zekthar like a physical blow. No species had ever successfully defied the Galactic Council. The combined military might of 12 advanced civilizations had been sufficient to maintain order for 3,000 years. But as he looked at the Hurricane and its escort fleet, Zekthar began to understand that humanity might actually be capable of backing up their declaration with force. "The Council will never accept this," he said. "They'll send the entire Grand Fleet to crush your rebellion." Admiral Cross smiled, and the expression was all teeth. "Let them come. The Hurricane isn't the only ship of her class, Admiral. She's just the first." Before Zekthar could respond to this ominous statement, his sensor operator called out urgently, "Sir, I'm detecting massive hyperspace distortions approaching from multiple vectors. Energy signatures match the human vessels." The tactical display lit up with new contacts as more human ships began emerging from hyperspace. But these weren't the sleek escorts that had accompanied the Hurricane. These were massive fleet carriers, their hulls bristling with launch bays and defensive systems that made even the Hurricane look small by comparison. "Mother of the Void," whispered the tactical officer. "How many ships do they have?" Admiral Cross seemed to hear the question across the communication channel. "The Terran Navy has been preparing for this moment since we first detected your surveillance probes in our home system 2 years ago. Every human colony, every orbital shipyard, every research facility has been working toward one goal, ensuring that when we met you in battle, the outcome wouldn't be in doubt." The new arrivals took up positions around the original human fleet, their formations suggesting tactical doctrine that had been refined through extensive simulation and planning. Zekthar counted 16 additional vessels, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything in his remaining force. This was all planned, he realized aloud. The colony, the confrontation, everything. "Of course it was planned," Cross confirmed. "Did you think we'd venture into contested space without backup?" "Admiral, humans have been studying warfare for our entire recorded history. We know how to set traps, how to choose battlegrounds, and how to make our enemies fight on our terms rather than theirs." One of the massive carriers launched what appeared to be fighters, but as they approached, Zekthar realized they were actually small ships roughly the size of Council escorts. They moved with impossible agility, performing maneuvers that should have been fatal to any organic crew. "Automated vessels," his science officer reported. "But the AI signatures are unlike anything in our databases. They're operating with tactical flexibility that rivals organic intelligence." "Not AI," Admiral Cross corrected, having somehow intercepted their internal communications. "Remote piloting through quantum entanglement links. Every one of those fighters has a human pilot sitting safely aboard the carrier, controlling it in real time across any distance. We learned long ago that putting pilots in harm's way when technology could do the job was inefficient. The implications were staggering. The humans had solved the light-speed communication barrier that limited all military operations across interstellar distances. They could coordinate their forces in real time across multiple star systems. "Admiral Zekthar," Cross continued, "I want you to understand something fundamental about human nature. We're not conquerors. We don't want to rule the galaxy or impose our will on other species. But we also won't be ruled by anyone else. The Council made the mistake of treating us like subjects rather than equals. That ends today." A new voice entered the conversation as one of the human carriers opened a communication channel. The speaker was a woman with the insignia of a fleet admiral, her uniform bearing decorations that spoke of extensive combat experience. "This is Admiral Sarah Voss, commanding the Terran Third Fleet. Admiral Cross, the perimeter is secure. We've detected no additional Council forces within 50 light-years." "Understood, Admiral Voss." "Admiral Zekthar, I'd like you to meet the commander of our rapid response fleet. In the time it took you to travel here from Council space, she moved 3 full battle groups into position around every major Council installation within 200 light-years of human territory." Zekthar felt his heart skip a beat. "That's impossible. Our early warning networks would have detected any major fleet movements." Admiral Voss spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Admiral, your early warning networks are designed to detect conventional hyperspace signatures. Our ships use quantum tunneling drives that create no detectable disturbance in normal space-time. We've been watching your fleets for months without you even knowing we were there. The tactical display updated to show the positions Admiral Voss had mentioned, and Zekthar stared in horror at the scope of human military deployment. They hadn't just prepared for this one confrontation. They had positioned forces throughout Council space, ready to strike at the heart of galactic civilization. "This is a declaration of war," he said weakly. "No," Admiral Cross replied firmly. "This is a declaration of independence backed by adequate force. There's a difference. We're not attacking Council worlds or threatening civilian populations. But we are making it clear that any attempt to subjugate humanity will be met with overwhelming force." Admiral Voss added, "The choice is yours, Admiral Zekthar. The Council can accept humanity as an independent power and work toward establishing formal diplomatic relations, or they can try to maintain their obsolete hegemony through force. But understand this. The technological advantages you've relied on for 3,000 years no longer exist. Human military science has surpassed everything the Council possesses. To demonstrate this point, one of the human carriers launched what appeared to be a probe toward the distant star. Zekthar watched in amazement as the small device accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed in seconds, its drive system leaving barely any detectable signature. "Reconnaissance probe," Admiral Cross explained casually. "We're mapping the local space for potential threats. That probe will survey this entire system and return with detailed intelligence in approximately 6 hours. Your best scouts would take weeks to do the same job." The probe's performance was another shock to Zekthar's understanding of technological limitations. Council ships required massive drives to achieve even modest fractions of light speed, and their reconnaissance operations were limited by communication delays and fuel requirements. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked. "Since the day we received your first contact message," Admiral Cross replied. "Humans are natural strategists, Admiral. We plan for contingencies you've never imagined. While your diplomats were discussing trade agreements and territorial boundaries, our military analysts were studying your fleet compositions, your tactical doctrines, and your technological vulnerabilities." Admiral Voss continued the thought. "We've been preparing for the possibility that peaceful coexistence might not be possible. Your Council's history is filled with examples of how you deal with species that don't conform to your vision of galactic order. We decided early on that we would not become another footnote in that history." The human fleet began to shift formation, their movements coordinated with mechanical precision. It was a display of military discipline that impressed even Zekthar, despite his current circumstances. "You have a choice to make, Admiral," Cross said. "Return to the Council and deliver our message. Tell them that humanity is prepared to defend its independence with force if necessary. But we're also willing to negotiate as equals. The age of Council hegemony is over. The question is whether it ends through diplomacy or through war." Zekthar looked around his bridge at his officers, seeing his own shock and fear reflected in their faces. The career military personnel who had served the Council faithfully for decades were now confronting the reality that their entire military doctrine had been rendered obsolete by a species they had considered primitive. "And if the Council refuses to accept this new reality?" he asked. Admiral Cross's expression grew cold. "Then the galaxy will learn what happens when humans are forced to fight for their survival. Admiral Voss's fleets are just the beginning. We have shipyards throughout human space producing vessels that make the Hurricane look like a scout ship. We have research facilities developing weapons that operate on principles your scientists haven't even theorized. And we have a population of 47 billion humans who are united in their determination to remain free." The weight of those numbers struck Zekthar like a physical blow. 47 billion humans, all apparently committed to military resistance against Council authority. The largest Council member species barely numbered 10 billion individuals, and their military traditions paled in comparison to humanity's apparently endless capacity for warfare. "We'll deliver your message," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Excellent," Admiral Cross replied. "You have 48 hours to clear human space before we consider your presence hostile. I suggest you don't waste time." As the Council fleet began its retreat, Zekthar couldn't shake the feeling that he had just witnessed the beginning of a new age in galactic history. An age where humanity would no longer be dismissed as primitive newcomers, but feared as the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever produced. The Hurricane and its escorts watched them go with the patience of apex predators, secure in their dominance, and ready to prove it again if necessary. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had never hosted a session quite like this one. Admiral Zekthar stood before the assembled representatives of 12 species, his uniform still bearing the stains and scorch marks from his encounter with the human fleet. The holographic display behind him showed the tactical recordings from the battle, images that had already sent shockwaves throughout the Council's military leadership. High Counselor Veltar of the Nexari Confederation leaned forward in her crystalline chair, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the light in patterns that indicated extreme agitation. Admiral Zekthar, you are asking us to believe that a single human vessel destroyed 7 of our most advanced warships in a matter of minutes. I'm not asking you to believe anything, High Counselor, Zekthar replied wearily. I'm reporting what happened. The tactical data is all there for your analysis. Counselor Krieg Th of the hegemony of Kresh, a massive creature whose 4 arms gestured dismissively, spoke in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. This is clearly some form of human trickery. Holographic projections, perhaps, or some kind of psychological warfare designed to make us overestimate their capabilities. Then, explain this, Zekthar activated another section of the recording, showing the moment when the Hurricane's dimensional weapons tore 3 ships out of existence. Explain how they created the energy signatures our sensors recorded. Explain how they moved a 4-kilometer vessel with the agility of a fighter craft. The chamber fell silent as the assembled counselors watched the replay. The destruction of the Eternal Glory was particularly sobering, as the hegemony vessel had been considered unsinkable by many military experts. Counselor Ithek of the Zephyrian Trade Federation, a being of pure energy contained within an environmental suit, spoke in electronic tones that conveyed barely controlled anger. Even if we accept your account at face value, Admiral, we cannot allow this precedent to stand. If humanity successfully defies Council authority, every species in the galaxy will believe they can do the same. With respect, Counselor, Zekthar said, the humans aren't defying Council authority out of rebellion or greed. They're defending themselves against what they perceive as imperial aggression. Perhaps we should consider whether our approach to governing the galaxy needs to evolve. The suggestion caused an uproar among the counselors. Shouts and protests in a dozen alien languages filled the chamber until High Counselor Veltar restored order with a sonic pulse that rattled the walls. Admiral Zekthar, she said coldly, your defeat seems to have affected your judgment. The Council has maintained galactic peace for 3 millennia through strength and unity of purpose. We will not abandon that principle because one species has developed advanced military technology. Advanced? Zekthar laughed bitterly. High Counselor, the humans aren't just advanced. They've transcended every assumption we've made about the limitations of technology. Their weapons operate on principles our best scientists can't even comprehend. Their ships move in ways that violate our understanding of physics. And their strategic thinking is centuries ahead of ours. Counselor Belnath of the Quallen Collective, whose telepathic abilities allowed her to sense the emotions behind Zekthar's words, nodded slowly. Admiral, I can feel the fear in your thoughts. This isn't just about military defeat. You genuinely believe these humans pose an existential threat to the Council. Because they do, Zekthar confirmed. The human admiral told me they have been preparing for this confrontation since they first detected our surveillance. While we were debating territorial boundaries and trade agreements, they were designing weapons specifically to counter our technologies. They know us better than we know ourselves. The chamber's main display activated, showing a holographic representation of the galaxy with current fleet positions marked in different colors. The sight was deeply troubling. Human ships were positioned throughout Council space, their quantum tunneling drives having allowed them to move undetected for months. This intelligence was confirmed by our own sensors after Admiral Zekthar's report, announced General Korthax of the Vorthak Military Command. The humans have somehow positioned significant forces near every major Council installation without triggering any of our early warning systems. Counselor Kriegich's forearms slammed against his chair's armrests. Impossible. Our sensor networks cover every major hyperspace route in Council space. Their ships don't use conventional hyperspace, Zekthar explained. They've developed some form of quantum tunneling drive that allows them to move through dimensions we can't detect or monitor. For all we know, they could have a battle fleet sitting right outside this system, and we'd never know until they chose to reveal themselves. The implications of this statement sent a chill through the chamber. The Council's entire military strategy was based on the assumption that they could detect and intercept any threatening force long before it reached critical installations. High Counselor Veltar activated her personal communication array. Fleet Command, I want an immediate security sweep of the Nexus Prime system. Deploy every sensor platform and reconnaissance ship we have. Within minutes, the response came back that would haunt the Council for years to come. High Counselor, our sweeps have detected 17 unidentified energy signatures that don't match any known drive systems. The signatures are consistent with Admiral Zekthar's reports of human quantum tunneling technology. The chamber erupted in panic as the realization hit home. Humanity had not only positioned forces throughout Council space, they had ships sitting in the heart of the galactic government, undetected and ready to strike. All vessels in the Nexus Prime system are ordered to identify themselves immediately, Veltar commanded. The response came on an open frequency that every ship and installation in the system could receive. The voice belonged to Admiral Sarah Voss, whose calm professionalism contrasted sharply with the chaos in the Council chamber. High Counselor Veltar, this is Admiral Voss commanding the Terran 4th Fleet. We have been monitoring this system for 6 standard months. Please be advised that any hostile action toward our forces will result in immediate retaliation. You dare to threaten the Galactic Council in its own seat of power. Veltar's voice rose to a shriek. We're not threatening anyone, High Counselor. We're merely ensuring that any discussions about humanity's future involve realistic assessments of our capabilities. The age of making decisions about us without us is over. Counselor Ithek's energy form flickered with agitation. This is an act of war. No species has ever violated the sovereignty of the Nexus Prime system. Admiral Voss's response carried an undertone of amusement. Counselor Ithek, your own military forces have been conducting surveillance operations in human space for over 2 years. We have detailed records of your intelligence-gathering activities. The only difference is that we're better at it than you are. General Korthax accessed his personal tactical display, his expression growing increasingly grim as he reviewed the human fleet positions. High Counselor, the humans have effectively neutralized our ability to project force. Every major fleet base, every strategic resource, every critical installation is now under the guns of their vessels. Impossible, Krieth repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. Actually, it's quite possible, came a new voice from the chamber's communication system. The display activated to show Admiral Marcus Cross aboard the Hurricane, which was apparently close enough to the Nexus Prime system to maintain real-time communication. Admiral Cross, High Counselor Veltar said, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage, your presence in this system constitutes an act of war against the Galactic Council. No, High Counselor, our presence here constitutes a reality check. For 3,000 years, the Council has maintained order through the threat of overwhelming force. Today, you discover that your force is no longer overwhelming. The question is how you're going to adapt to this new reality. Cross gestured, and the display behind him showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with human and Council positions clearly marked. As you can see, humanity is not seeking conquest or domination. Our ships are positioned defensively, protecting human space and ensuring that any Council response is carefully considered rather than reflexive. What are your demands? Veltar asked through gritted teeth. Simple. Recognition of humanity's independence from Council authority, establishment of formal diplomatic relations between equals, and cessation of all surveillance and intelligence operations in human space. We're not asking for territory or tribute. We're asking for respect. Counselor Belnath leaned forward, her telepathic senses probing the human admiral's emotional state. Admiral Cross, I sense no deception in your words, but also no willingness to compromise. What happens if the Council refuses your terms? Cross's expression hardened. Then, the Council will discover what happens when an irresistible force meets a very movable object. Counselor, human military doctrine is based on a simple principle. When negotiation fails, victory becomes the only acceptable outcome. The tactical display updated to show additional human ships emerging from quantum tunneling near every major Council world. The scope of their military deployment was staggering. They had somehow positioned enough firepower to threaten the entire galactic civilization simultaneously. How many ships do you have? General Corthax asked in horror. Enough, Cross replied simply. General, humans have been preparing for this moment since the day we learned we weren't alone in the universe. Every shipyard in human space has been producing vessels designed specifically to fight the Galactic Council. Every research facility has been developing countermeasures for your technologies. Every military academy has been studying your tactical doctrines and developing ways to defeat them. Admiral Voss's voice joined the conversation from her position near the Nexus Prime defense perimeter. The human species has spent the last 2 centuries doing nothing but preparing for war with technologically superior opponents. It's what we do best. Counselor Ithek's energy form pulsed with increasing agitation. You speak of war as if it's inevitable. It's not inevitable, Cross assured him. It's optional. The Council can choose to accept humanity as an independent power and work toward peaceful coexistence, or it can choose to try maintaining its hegemony through force. But understand this, the outcome of any military confrontation is no longer in doubt. To demonstrate his point, Cross activated a weapons display that showed the Hurricane's full arsenal. The exotic matter cannons, dimensional rift generators, and antimatter projectors represented firepower that dwarfed anything the Council possessed. This is just one ship, Counselors. Humanity has built 57 Hurricane-class battleships and over 400 smaller vessels using the same technological principles. We have the industrial capacity to build more and the population to crew them. The numbers struck the assembled Counselors like physical blows. 57 vessels like the Hurricane could theoretically destroy every Council fleet simultaneously. 400 additional ships represented a force that could occupy the entire galaxy. You're bluffing, Creek TH said weakly. General Corthax cross-addressed the Vorthack military commander directly. Your own intelligence estimates suggest that the Council's combined fleets number approximately 800 major vessels. Would you care to engage 57 Hurricane-class battleships and 400 support vessels in open combat? Corthax looked at the tactical data for a long moment before shaking his head. The outcome would be unfavorable to Council forces. That's a polite way of saying it would be a massacre, Cross confirmed. Counselors, we're offering you the chance to avoid that outcome. Accept humanity's independence, and we can begin building a new relationship based on mutual respect rather than dominance and submission. The chamber fell silent as the weight of the decision settled on the assembled representatives. 3 millennia of unquestioned authority had ended in a single day, replaced by a new reality where humanity held the dominant position. The age of human ascendancy had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler, 442b, the Galactic Council chambers bore little resemblance to the proud seat of power they had been for 3 millennia. The ornate decorations remained, but the atmosphere had fundamentally changed. Where once 12 species had dictated terms to the galaxy, now 13 species sat around a circular table as equals, with the newest member occupying a position that reflected their true influence. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in the chair that had been hastily constructed for humanity's representative, her crisp diplomatic uniform bearing the insignia of the Terran Republic. Behind her, a holographic display showed the current positions of human fleets, no longer hidden by quantum tunneling technology, but visible to all as a reminder of the new balance of power. High Counselor Veltar called the session to order, her crystalline features reflecting the light in patterns that had become subdued over the past months. The Nexuary leader had aged visibly since the human revelation, the weight of her species' diminished status taking a visible toll. The Council recognizes Ambassador Vasquez of the Terran Republic, Veltar announced, her voice lacking the imperious tone that had once characterized Council proceedings. "Thank you, High Counselor," Elena replied with diplomatic courtesy. "Before we address today's agenda, I'd like to provide an update on the Kepler colony situation that initiated our diplomatic realignment." The holographic display shifted to show images of a thriving human settlement on Kepler 442b. What had begun as a small mining operation was now a bustling city of over 2 million inhabitants, complete with orbital shipyards that were producing the next generation of human vessels. The Kepler Colonial Authority reports successful harvest of rare earth minerals that will significantly improve hyperdrive efficiency for all species willing to engage in trade negotiations. We're prepared to share this technology as part of our new partnership agreements. Counselor Krieg Th of the hegemony of Kresh shifted uncomfortably in his massive chair. The promise of improved hyperdrive technology represented capabilities the Council desperately needed, especially given humanity's apparent ability to move through dimensions they couldn't access. Ambassador, Krieg Th rumbled, the hegemony is interested in establishing formal trade relations. What are humanity's requirements for technology sharing agreements? Elena smiled pleasantly. Simple mutual respect, Counselor. No more surveillance operations in human space. No more unilateral decisions about human colonial rights. And recognition of our sovereignty over all systems we've legitimately claimed. The terms were far more reasonable than anyone had expected after humanity's overwhelming display of military force. Many council members had anticipated demands for tribute or territorial concessions. Instead, the humans seemed genuinely interested in peaceful coexistence. "What about military cooperation?" asked General Korthax, who had been deeply studying human tactical doctrines since his humiliating intelligence assessment. "The galaxy faces external threats that might require our combined forces." Elena's expression grew serious. "General, that's actually something we need to discuss urgently. Our deep space reconnaissance has detected something concerning in the Andromeda Void region." The holographic display shifted to show sensor readings from the edge of known space. The energy signatures were massive, clearly artificial, and definitely not generated by any known Council species. The Terran Deep Space Command has been monitoring this region since we established our extended sensor network. These readings suggest a fleet of unknown vessels, possibly numbering in the thousands, approaching our galaxy from intergalactic space. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. External threats to the galaxy were theoretical possibilities that the Council had never seriously planned for. Their entire military doctrine was based on maintaining internal order, not defending against invasion. "How long before they arrive?" Veltar asked urgently. "Our best estimates suggest 18 months before they reach the Outer Rim," Elena replied. "Possibly sooner if they have faster-than-light capabilities we haven't accounted for." Counselor Ithek's energy form flickered with agitation. The Council fleets could not possibly defend against a force of that magnitude, especially given our recent losses during the confrontation with humanity. Elena nodded sympathetically, which is why we're proposing a joint defense initiative. The Terran Navy is prepared to share our advanced defensive technologies with all Council members in exchange for a unified command structure and coordinated response planning. The offer was unprecedented. The humans were essentially proposing to arm the same powers they had just defeated, trusting them to work together against a common threat. "What kind of technologies are we discussing?" General Korthax asked with barely concealed eagerness. Admiral Cross materialized as a hologram beside Elena. His image transmitted from the Hurricane, which was now permanently stationed as part of the Nexus Prime Defense Fleet. "General, we're talking about quantum tunneling drives, dimensional warfare capabilities, exotic matter weapons, and defensive systems that make our current ships look primitive." The Admiral activated a presentation that showed technical specifications for human military technology. The data was mind-boggling. Weapons that could tear holes in space-time, shields that operated in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and propulsion systems that could cross the galaxy in days rather than months. "The catch," Cross continued, "is that this technology requires a complete rethinking of military doctrine. Your current tactics and strategies would be useless with these capabilities." You need to train your officers in human-developed combat methods. Counselor Belneth leaned forward, her telepathic senses probing the motivations behind the human offer. Admiral, I sense genuine concern for galactic security in your thoughts, but also strategic calculation. What do humans gain from sharing such advanced technology? Elena answered before Cross could respond. Counselor, humans have learned through hard experience that security can't be built on the weakness of others. A strong galaxy is a safe galaxy. If we're facing an external threat of this magnitude, we need every species operating at maximum capability. The logic was sound, but it represented a complete reversal of traditional power dynamics. For 3 millennia, the Council had maintained control by ensuring that no single species became too powerful. Humanity was proposing the opposite, deliberate proliferation of advanced technology to create a stronger collective defense. There's another factor, Admiral Cross added. Our analysis of the approaching fleet suggests technology that's even more advanced than ours. We're going to need every advantage we can get, and that includes the tactical expertise and diverse capabilities that each Council species brings to the table. The admission that human technology might not be sufficient to guarantee victory was sobering. If the species that had just revolutionized galactic warfare was concerned about these newcomers, the threat was indeed existential. What kind of command structure are you proposing? Veltor asked. Elena activated a new display showing an organizational chart that placed human and Council forces under integrated command. Joint task forces with mixed crews, standardized communication protocols, and unified strategic planning. Each species would maintain sovereignty over their own forces, but tactical coordination would be handled by joint command centers. The proposal was revolutionary in its scope. Never in galactic history had the major powers attempted such complete military integration. The Qualan Collective agrees in principle, Belneth announced, her telepathic abilities having confirmed the sincerity of human intentions. Our industrial capacity could be retooled to produce human-designed vessels within 6 months. One by one, the other Council members voiced their agreement. The external threat had accomplished what 3,000 years of politics had failed to achieve: genuine cooperation between species that had previously viewed each other as competitors. Excellent, Elena said with satisfaction. Admiral Cross, please begin transmitting the technical specifications to all Council military commands. We'll need to start integration training immediately. Over the following hours, the Council chambers became the planning center for the greatest military mobilization in galactic history. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists to adapt advanced technologies to different physiologies and tactical doctrines. Shipyards throughout the galaxy began retooling to produce vessels that incorporated the best of both human innovation and traditional Council engineering. Admiral Voss joined the planning session via hologram from her position commanding the expanded perimeter defense fleet. Ambassador, our deep space sensors are detecting acceleration changes in the approaching fleet. They've definitely noticed our galaxy and are adjusting course for a more direct approach. Time until arrival? Elena asked. 14 months, assuming they don't have some form of enhanced FTL we haven't observed. The shortened timeline added urgency to the mobilization efforts, but also revealed something encouraging. The unknown fleet had noticed the galaxy's increasing defensive preparations and was adapting their approach accordingly. This suggested intelligence and caution rather than mindless aggression. Admiral Cross, Elena said, I want you to begin preparing a first contact protocol. If these beings are intelligent, we should at least attempt communication before assuming hostility. Cross nodded. Already in progress, Ambassador. We're developing a quantum communication array that should be capable of reaching them long before they arrive. If they're willing to talk, we'll know their intentions well in advance. As the session continued into the night, the transformation of galactic civilization became clear. What had begun as a territorial dispute between humanity and the Council had evolved into something far more significant. The birth of a truly unified galactic civilization capable of defending itself against external threats. The Hurricane-class battleship had indeed unleashed something that crushed the galaxy's arrogance, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of conquest or domination, it had unleashed cooperation, innovation, and unity of purpose that would define the galaxy's future for millennia to come. In the end, the greatest weapon humanity had brought to the galaxy wasn't their advanced technology or superior tactics. It was their vision of what galactic civilization could become when species worked together as equals rather than competitors. The age of human-led cooperation had begun, and the approaching threat from beyond would find a galaxy ready to defend itself with technologies and strategies that no single species could have developed alone. The council chambers, once a symbol of hierarchical control, had become the nerve center of true galactic unity. And at the heart of it all sat the humans, no longer seen as primitive newcomers, but recognized as the catalysts who had transformed the galaxy into something greater than the sum of its parts. The arrogance of the old order had indeed been crushed, replaced by the wisdom of cooperation and the strength that came from unity in the face of the unknown.